But we're going to jump right in. This is working with buyers now. And remember, the leads, listings, and leverage model that we always talk about is that unless you've got leads, you're not in business. And so lead generation is always the name of the game. But we do talk about the fact that listing leads are just more valuable to your business than buyer leads because listings are far more leveraged. Because when you control the inventory, the buyers just come to you, right? And so for every listing that you take, you generate buyer leads as well. But in the very beginning, the truth be told, the pathway to get into production is faster by going and getting in relationship with buyers. It's just easier to find buyers to work with. There's more things that you can do to get in the pathway of buyers through marketing, like Facebook advertisements, through prospecting activities like open houses. There's just faster ways to get in the pathway of a buyer. And in the very beginning, what you need is to get something going. In the very beginning, what we need is momentum, and we need income, and we need deals to come together. So while we're lead focusing around listings, you know what? Your first at-bats are likely to be buyer opportunities. And so when you get one, what do you do? How do you handle that consultation? That's where we're going to go today. As we always kick off, we talk about what successful agents do. We know that success leaves clues. And every day, agents work on growing their business and they work on running their business. The topic today is going to be focused here on making buyer presentations. I do see the chat box just lit up, and I thank Rosemary for telling me that she can see the screen. Jorge, your question is where do I find the buyer's presentation? Stick with me, my friend. That's where we're going to go today. All right. First things first. When you've qualified, you're right. One of the things that we want to do is we want to set the appointment only with qualified people, right? I don't want you need to qualify you as a person. I'm simply meaning that you're qualified to earn the right to meet with me. And the thing that we have to just remember, and you've heard me say it before, but I'm going to say it again and again, is that your time is your most precious commodity, and it is everyone's most precious commodity. And who you give your time to largely determines what kind of a life you're going to have. And if we give our time to people who don't earn the right to our time, we take our time away from people who do have the right to our time. The people that we love, our friends, our family. And so we want to be judicious protectors of our time. And what we do is we want to make sure that we qualify people properly. This is the model, the lead generation model, right? In setting the appointment, if you look at this model here on the screen, at the very top, our prospecting and our marketing activities capture the leads. And when we capture these folks, we're going to qualify them and really decide, are you ready, willing, and able, right? Some of the people that are in our database don't need our services right now. Some of the people that do need our services, we're going to cultivate those relationships. And when they raise their hand, when they become what we call an opportunity, that's the language of command. Our database, we call those opportunities. We're just going to keep talking to them and figuring out, is it time yet for us to get together and really get started in the buying process? We're going to ask the questions through our qualifying. Are you ready? Are you willing? Are you able? And in this course toolkit, and again, I in the very beginning of the course, I showed you where to find that toolkit. You go to Keller Williams University, you go to the Ignite page, the Ignite 2.0 page, and all the resources are there for you to download for free. And in the toolkit, there is a buyer lead sheet. And what the lead sheet does is it just kind of structures the questions. You know, what are the questions that I need to ask to determine, is this really the right time, or do we need to cultivate this a little bit longer? Can anybody give me an example of what could cause a buyer to be ready to purchase a home, to be willing to purchase a home, but they're just not able to right now? That's probably the easiest one to think about. But who can unmute or put in chat, what would be a reason that makes ready?
Income, like finances.
I don't have the money.
Yes.
I might have the money, but I'm temporarily one of the millions of people right now that are temporarily out of work. They're furloughed because of of what's going on in the world. And if you're not working, you're not going to qualify for a mortgage. And so that's something that has to be resolved, right? How about somebody who is ready to buy a house? They're able to buy a house, but they may not be willing to do what it takes to get a house. What would that person potentially look like?
Someone who doesn't want to get engaged in multiple offer situation.
Man, oh man, isn't that the truth? Today, especially, there's so little inventory and there's such high demand. And it seems like all the good stuff goes into multiples right away. And if it's just not in your DNA, and look, I get it. Because what happens in a multiple bidding situation is that people begin to act out of emotion instead of out of logic. And once emotion takes over, people start making what I would call just crazy bids. I've seen houses going for 150% of their asking price. And that's just stupid is what that is. But in this kind of an emotional market, that may be what it takes. And if that's not what you're willing to do, then we have a couple of choices to make. One would be that maybe we restrict our searching to homes that are less competitive, meaning homes that have been on the market a little bit longer, that maybe have been rejected by the buyers. And to some extent, if we do decide to move forward on one of those, there won't be this competition forcing us into multiple bids. Or maybe we just have to wait, but that may not be the best idea with interest rates being what they are. The bottom line is we need to have a system of questions that really starts to determine, are you ready to do what needs to happen? Are you willing to do what needs to happen? Are you able to do what needs to happen? And if those all line up, then let's get to the appointment, right? Let's get to the appointment and let's talk about it. And so use the lead sheet that is in the toolkit. Download that lead sheet and start to use those questions as a guide. I don't have a copy, unfortunately, of that lead sheet available right now to share with you. But that's what we're going to do. That's the tool that we're going to use. And don't be hesitant to have that guide in front of you while you're talking to folks. If you meet someone potentially at an open house and you want to start doing some qualification, I think it's a perfectly valid idea to have that lead sheet question sheet right with you at the open house and ask those questions right off the sheet. Professionals do that. Doctors will ask questions and they'll work from a computer screen that prompts them to ask all the right questions to make sure they're not missing anything. Airline pilots have checklists of things that they need to make sure that they're doing in the right order. Professionals use guides, and that's a guide. So go ahead and do that. Now, what we want to do is we really want to talk about preparing. So there's two things that you're going to want to do. One is you're going to want to prepare what we call a buyer's guide, which is basically a handbook, if you will, of all the information that they're going to need to know in terms of how to be successful in this market. And that buyer's guide lives in Command. And I am going to share my Command account with you to show you where to find that. And while I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs of how to customize that, we do have videos on that already that are created. You can work with your tech coordinators to really learn how to customize those guides. The very first thing that we need to do is to kind of have that guide kind of ready to go. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to take you to my Command dashboard. And again, I'm going to ask anybody just to give me a quick thumbs up to show that you can see my Command dashboard here and that we've all gotten in the right space together here. And what we're doing here is, as you know, on the left-hand corner, you see that red KW. You click on it. It's going to open up all the different menus so you can actually not have to remember, what is that icon mean again? Oh, I'm going to open that up. And the guides, right? The buyer's guide, the listing guide, that's going to be right down here in designs. It's in the design shop. So we're going to click on designs, and that's going to basically eventually spin around and take us to this design template. What it shows here are all the designs, all the things that I've already created. What you want to do to start to customize this buyer's guide for yourself is go right here to this kind of sort of aqua colored plus sign and click on it. And it's going to open up a menu box that says, what specifically are you trying to create? Are you trying to create a video? Are you trying to create a print piece? Are you going to try to create an email or a social media post? And this is a print item, right? This is a print item. So we're going to click print and we're going to click next. And then what it does is it just kind of opens up our desktop, hopefully. Let me try that again because I didn't quite take. Sometimes when I have so many different things open that it doesn't always catch, but it opens up this workspace. And while that's happening, you'll start to see now all these different templates. And this would live on the left-hand side in the buyer templates. So we're going to click on it. And you'll see here, these are little neighborhood snapshots that you can create for your buyers to show the highlights of the communities that they have interest in. You'll do the research, you'll put it into this snapshot, you'll send it out to them. This is something that's related to Keller Williams's mortgage company. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time with that. It's in this buyer presentation here that we're going to go. And there's basically two versions of this guide. There's kind of the white one and there's kind of the darker one. Let's just click on this here. We'll click on use and it's going to open it up for you. And this is where you get to customize it. And again, I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs of customizing, but on the left-hand side, you'll see all the different pages here. And you'll customize this with your picture. You'll put a table of contents in. And we're going to go through the high notes of this in just a second. But we're not going to do all the customization here. You'll just see that there's pages with all kinds of stuff in here about the buying process. There's a page about your app. There's a page for you to allow your buyers to build their profile on your website, to think about what would be on their home's wish list, right? Lots and lots of different pages in this guide. Once you go through it, once you customize it, what you're going to do then is you're just going to download it. You're going to click save and download right here. You're going to click done first. You're going to click download, and then you're going to have it, right? And so take some time and customize this guide and get it kind of ready to go so that you have it when you have an opportunity to meet with a buyer. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share back into the PowerPoint again. I hope you're still following me. All the screen sharing that we're going to do today can make you a little bit dizzy, but hopefully you're back in my PowerPoint again, and I'm counting on somebody to get me off the griddle if we're not there. But once you've created this guide, right, first thing you want to do is take a look. These are screenshots now. I wanted to just kind of do some screenshots here of some of the key elements here. Each section of the presentation does give you the opportunity to connect with your buyer, to build confidence, to get them to build confidence in you, to get them to understand your unique value proposition. What specific knowledge and talents and market knowledge do you have that makes you the very best choice to work with them on purchasing a home? And the first thing that the guide does is gives you an opportunity to kind of put a little table of contents in it, right? So customize that. And then there will be pages, right, that really spell out that this is about you. This is about your needs. Your needs come first, right? And so what we do is we start to kind of think about what's important to you in purchasing a home. We do what's called a needs analysis. And a needs analysis is a conversation with them where we really start to recognize that there are certain things that you'd like to have, and there are certain things that you have to have. And of the things that you like to have and the things that you have to have, they don't all have the same weight. Some of them are more important than others. And the needs analysis is really just going through and having a conversation to make sure that we can kind of get that priority clear in our minds. One of the things that makes it really hard for buyers to make a decision and to move forward in a purchase is that they haven't really taken the time to kind of think through what needs to happen, what's the most important thing, what would be we'd be willing to give a little bit on, and what are the things that we're going to dig in on. And so we really need to do a really good needs analysis. And I'm going to show you a quick video in a second on that. But I'm going to tell you that once you understand what they need to have happen to make this a success for them, it's also really important to understand that, you know, we kind of live in an experience economy as well. Being able to find a great house with them and to be able to help navigate the transaction and get it purchased is important, but it's not always enough. You know, people have to have a really good experience working with you at the same time. And so once we do our needs analysis and we find what's important to them, the next series of questions that we really need to think about asking them is, what needs to happen for this to be a great experience for you? Because I want you to not only get the house of your dreams, but I want you to have a great experience, because if you have a great experience, then you're more likely to be a great advocate for me, to write great testimonials, to help me grow my business. And so what's important to you? And there are questions like, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most wonderful experience that you couldn't wait to tell all your friends about, and 1 being a 3-alarm dumpster fire that was just a complete train wreck. You know, I don't want this to be a 1. What needs to happen for this to be a 10 for you? And just listen and hear what they say. They'll probably tell you They'll probably tell you things like, not only help me find the right house, not only help me negotiate it on my terms and get a great price, but they're probably going to tell you things like, I need to feel like you're not pushing me. I need to feel like you're responsive to my needs. I need to feel like if I have a question that you're there for me. I need to feel like you're not pushing me into something that I'm not ready for. All those different things are things that we need to understand about. And they really are part of the needs analysis. I need to know not only what needs to happen in the house, but I need to understand also what needs to happen to make this a really world-class experience as well. So I want to share a video, and it's always hard to switch around from PowerPoint to video, but I have a little bit of a quick video here that starts to talk about the needs analysis. And before I get started, I am going to really ask that somebody just gives me a thumbs up and tells me that you can see my screen here that says needs analysis. Ariane, I can always count on you. You're the best. Thank you for that. And so this is just a quick, very short video, but it starts to talk about needs analysis, and we're going to cover a couple of points that I want to make sure that we talk about. So I'm turning my microphone to my computer so you can hear this. And let's get this video started.
Needs analysis.
Whoa, that's a little
systematic process of collecting information about needs, wants, and desires that is used to establish and define goals. Step 2 of the buyer consultation is the needs analysis. Only when you understand what is ultimately important to your customers can you deliver it. Many agents ask their clients, "What do you want in a house?" and stop there. They don't realize the answer to that question isn't the same as "What do you need?" or "What's important to you?" Determining your customer's core wants, needs, and values is a process. Draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper and write needs on the left and wants on the right, and use it to track their needs and wants as you go through this process. At this point, you will have a clear understanding of what buyers need versus what they want, but you are not done. Now, you want to drill down and uncover their values by finding out why they need and want what they do. Use this question: what about blank is important to you? Let's see how it works. Say your buyer has told you that they want or need a large yard. You say,
"Well, what's about a large yard that's important to you?"
Your buyer says, "I like to garden." You ask,
"We like gardening, and what's important about gardening?"
Your buyer says, "I like to spend time outdoors. It helps me relax." You ask,
"Make you feel relaxed, and what's important about being relaxed?"
Your buyer says, "When I'm relaxed, I can spend more quality time with my wife." Bullseye. A large yard equals family. At this point, you have uncovered a value. You can now look for other ways it applies to your buyer.
A large yard is important because it allows you to spend quality time with your wife, correct? So what else about your new home would be important to you in terms of spending more time with your wife?
All right. That started out really loud. I hope I did not blast anyone's ears out. That gentleman at the very end is a guy named Tony DeCello. Some of you know who Tony is. Some of you may not. Tony is now sort of retired. He is the husband of Diana Kokoska, who used to be the president of MAPS Coaching, or Keller Williams Coaching Company. At one time, Tony was the number 6 real estate agent in the world in terms of production. He comes off as a bit of a stiff in that video. But he knows a lot about real estate. And what the point is that we're asking here is there's this process of going deeper in our questioning. And we have to recognize that what motivates people to take action, and remember, at the end of the day, sales is all about motivating folks into making decisions and taking action. And people take action based on values, and people take action based on their emotions. And so it's important to understand, what is it that's the underlying value or the underlying emotion here that's prompting you into action. So when you're doing your needs analysis questions, we go through this process that we call going 3 deep. And 3 deep means staying in the same line of questioning, but just getting a deeper understanding. Tell me what's important to you about that. Why is that important to you? Again, Tony comes off as a bit of a stiff in that video. He is a very skilled agent, but those are the questions. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, on this list of things that you prioritized, you said that the number one thing is a really big backyard. So why is it so important to have a big backyard? And just listen to their answers. Well, if I have a big backyard, then I have a place where the kids can play and I can always keep an eye on them. And so why is it important for you to kind of be able to kind of see what's going on all the time? Well, because it's a dangerous world out there, and I want to make sure that my kids are safe all the time. Now we're getting to core values, right? You love your family, you love your kids. You want to make sure that you can kind of keep them safe. And that's the value that's driving the decision of having a big backyard. And so we really want to just ask deep enough questions to really get that. The tendency sometimes is to water ski across the top of these questions and just go new subject to new subject to new subject. And it sounds more like this. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, of all the things that we prioritized in your home, you ranked having a big backyard as important. What's important to you about having a big backyard? And they answer, if I have a big backyard, the kids can play in the backyard. And before we go deep and really understand why that matters, we change the subject to the next question. The second most important thing that you said is multiple bathrooms. What's important to you about multiple bathrooms? Well, we don't have a whole lot of people lined up in the bathroom in the morning. And then you go to a new subject. What we're getting there is just real shallow understanding. We don't really know what the values are. And if we're going to be great consultants and guide people into making decisions, we have to know what these drivers are. So a needs analysis, a good needs analysis, is asking the questions and going deeper and deeper and learning how to make that conversational, learning how to make that not sound like you're the district attorney. This is not the Mueller Inquisition here. This is just conversation. And so, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when we spoke on the phone and we talked about getting together, you shared some ideas of what you're trying to accomplish and why. And I think I have a really good idea, but I just want to make sure, and you just be sure that you get it, right? Now, I went back to the whole idea of the experience, making sure that this is a great experience. Again, in the experience economy, there's a course that we teach called the customer experience. And in that course, there is a video of a buyer who's purchased his home in San Francisco. And he's a younger guy, probably his late 20s, early 30s, younger to me anyway. And he was asked in the panel, this was a panel of real estate consumers, tell me about your experience. And he says, yeah, I got the house that I wanted. And I got it in the neighborhood that I wanted. And I got it at my price and my terms. And the moderator says, well, that sounds like a great outcome. It sounds like a great experience. Would you use the real estate agent again if you had an opportunity? And he said, yeah, probably not. And people were like floored a little bit. Like, what do you mean? You just told me that you got the house of your dreams in the neighborhood you wanted at the price and terms that you wanted. And he said, I expected to get that. That's why I hired an agent. She did her job, but she didn't do anything special, right? That's the environment that we work in. And that's what it means to kind of thinking about how do I pay attention to what needs to happen. So not only do you get what you want, but you get it in a way that you have a great experience at the same time. So the needs analysis is not just the needs of what's in the house, but what needs to happen to make this a great experience. And we do that needs analysis. And then part of what you're going to do is you're going to allow them to, to think about setting up the profile, to build their buyer profile on your website, to get an opportunity to start to customize it so it starts to show inventory. One of the beautiful things that exists in these websites that we build for our clients is that it really is built using artificial intelligence as well. And so as they use this buyer's website that we create for them, this buyer's landing page, it starts to track what kinds of things do they pay attention to online. It starts to notice that you tend to be looking at homes in certain communities more so than other communities. It starts to notice that the homes where you seem to be spending more time looking at the pictures are homes that seem to have hardwood floors over carpeting. And it uses that artificial intelligence so that the next time they come back to visit, it starts to show them things first that seem to fit what their interests are. And it uses that artificial intelligence to send you a message that says, hey, Hal, your buyers, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, seem to be looking at homes in Clark and Cranford more than any place else, make sure that those are on the hot list for you, because that seems to be where they're interested. Oh, and by the way, they seem to have real interest in homes that have hardwood floors. You may want to focus on that as well. Building out your profile, building out the buyer's profile on these websites and using the artificial intelligence just helps to make it a better experience, right? That's what this is about. There's a place in the guide to talk about your wish list, right? To talk about your wants list. There's a place in the guide to talk about neighborhoods, right? How do you select the right neighborhoods? And we have the ability to really, we've mapped out every neighborhood, not just town. We bought a software company that had already mapped every neighborhood in North America. And when you think about towns, it's broken into little neighborhoods, and frequently neighborhoods are sometimes built around historic districts. Sometimes they're built around sending districts to different schools. I think in my town, there's 5 different grammar schools, and each of those grammar schools kind of has its own little neighborhood that sends there. And so when we know the neighborhoods that people have interested in, we can identify those neighborhoods and send them updates of what's specifically going on in the neighborhood of interest to them. And maybe it's the neighborhood that they live in, and maybe it's a neighborhood that they just want to learn about because they're thinking about moving at some point in the future and they want to explore. But the neighborhood insights really gives you an opportunity to send them information that's relevant, that is important to them, creates a great experience, and it makes you look like a smarty pants, which is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get them to recognize that working with you is going to give them the best opportunity to get what they want. It gives you an opportunity in this guide to go through the process. Let's talk about how it works. Let's talk about what the relationship with an agent looks like. Let's talk about what's involved in getting pre-approved for a loan. Let's talk about finding your new home and what this showing process looks like. Let's talk about how the negotiations work. It goes through all of that, explains the process, right? And it even has in it some pages like this one, which probably don't apply to you. It's the disclosure that if they were going to buy a home using Keller Williams's mortgage company, and we're not really using Keller Mortgage here in our part of New Jersey. We do have affiliations with different lenders, Atlantic Home Loans, Bond Street Mortgage, and some of our markets, New Jersey lenders. And we do have affiliation agreements with those. And if people do choose to work with you as a buyer, they're going to need to sign a disclosure that says that they recognize that we have a partnership with those companies. And those companies are actually paying us for the right to get in front of you. And we have to get that disclosure signed, but this one may not necessarily need to go in the buyer's presentation, the Keller Mortgage one. But you're just going to go through that buyer's guide and you're going to customize it. What's your specific value proposition? This is where you swap out your pictures. How long have you been in the business? How many clients have you served? If you're newer and you don't have your own numbers yet that you can really bank on, then talk about your office's numbers. How long has your office been serving Bergen County? How many transactions a year does your office do? What percentage of the market share does your office do? Use your office's numbers until you have your own. There's lots of different parts of that buyer's guide. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to have that ready. I want you to have that ready to put in the hands of your buyers. And in fact, you probably want to get it in the hands of the buyers even before you're ready to go to a consultation appointment yet. Because, you know, there are some agents who propose, build that buyer's guide out. It's kind of your how-to manual, and get it in the hands of people who can be good advocates for you. Get it in the hands of people who can kind of put it out there and refer it to their friends so that they can take a look and see what you're about and see what your value proposition is. But by all means, we're going to get that ready. We're going to get it into people's hands in advance of the buyer's consultation itself, because it does a lot of the heavy lifting. It's a little bit like a pre-listing presentation on the listing side. We just started the Win with Sellers course this week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and tomorrow, Thursday at 1 o'clock, we're going to talk about what that pre-listing guide looks like, specifically what data goes in there, right? And build it out, because it does a lot of heavy lifting. And, you know, a lot of times what you want to do is you want to send them these guides and give them a little homework. I want you to review it before we meet. And then when you get there, the first very question is, did you get a chance to look at it? Do you have any questions, right? And it's not necessarily so that if they do have questions, that I'm immediately going to answer that question. I'm going to take note of it. I'm going to make sure that before we're done today that we get to it. But I'm going to go through my consultation, and I'm going to make sure that when the time comes to address the issue that they're raising, that we give it time, that we address it thoroughly. But I want to get that guide in your hands, both on the listing side for the pre-listing and on the buyer's guide for the buyers before we go in to the consultation. Any questions about that before we move on to conducting the buyer's consultation? Any questions about that? No questions? Okie dokie. Then here's what we're going to do. I'm going to change gears to the buyer's consultation. And I actually have another video here. I'm going to go back a couple of slides. I don't want to get to the buyer's representation agreement yet. I want to go to another video. So stick with me as I try to get out of this slide deck and get into another video. And it's the video on the buyer's consultation. Nikki Ubaldini is her name. She's a Keller Williams agent out of Florida somewhere. I can't remember exactly in Florida where she is. I wanted to say Tallahassee, but I think that's wrong. And again, quick thumbs up. Anybody who can give me the thumbs up says you see the black screen here that says buyer's consultation. We're going to get started. This is about a 5-minute video, and I want you to take some notes here on the elements that she touches on and how to conduct a great buyer's consultation. And once we go through this, we're going to unpack these a little bit, but I'm just going to start with the video, and I'm going to adjust my volume here so I don't blow your ears out like I think I did last time, and I apologize for that. But let's get this started. Let's hear what Nikki has to say about actually conducting the buyer's consultation.
Nikki Ubaldini, and I've been in real estate for about 25 years in the Tampa Bay area. Been with Keller Williams since December of 1998. Now we're going to talk about the buyer's consultation. Let's start with the overview. First, know your scripts. Know what you're going to say, when you're going to say it. Second, make sure you educate yourself. Know what's happening in the market, know the price differentials, how short sales work, and how REOs work. Third, never book your appointment out further than 48 hours, preferably 24, and always confirm that appointment. Fourth, never do research ahead of time. Many of you think it's important to be prepared, but what you're going to discover through the consultation is what they've told you on the phone is not really what they want to see. And last, always have a buyer's book that gives them the overview of the process so that they have something to take away. Now it's time to go through the buyer's consultation. But first, always ask for permission. Remind them, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I know this isn't your first home. Would it be okay if we spent a few minutes to go through the buying process so that we both know what's going to happen when you work with me, just to make sure we're both on the same page? Would that be okay? Typically, every buyer says yes. So you start at the top. One, you talk about what's going to happen behind the scenes, the research, how long it might take, and how you're going to weed out those properties and only show them the best of the best. Next, you're going to talk about how you're going to show them property, and that the average buyer won't see any more than 8 to 10 properties before they'll make a decision. Next, make sure they understand what's going on in the market. Many times they've heard about this seller's market or buyer's market, and they don't really understand what it is. But what they do need to know is that great homes sell in every market, and they sell fast. And they sell close to the asking price if they're priced right. Now, don't forget to talk about short sales and the time that it might take to make sure they truly understand what they're getting into. Also, REOs are very intriguing until they understand that they might take a little sweat equity in the end. So spend some time going over those two properties. Now it's offer time. Make sure you let them know that you're going to help them make an educated decision on what to offer by doing a market analysis that shows them exactly what's happening in the market so they can feel comfortable about the price they're paying. And finally, they bought it. Their contract was accepted. And now they need to know that really that's when our job starts. We explain to them there's inspections, there's appraisals, and all the different things that are going to happen between now and the closing table, including the review of all the documents prior to their closing. Now we're going to go over the needs analysis. We're going to start with what we call the TENS process. So we start with the transaction and we say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we're going to talk about the transaction. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being it's not very good, and 10 meaning it's a great experience, what one thing has to happen for it to be a 10? The next process we're going to talk about is on the home. And we're going to make sure that each person knows that they're only going to get 3 must-haves. So the 10s will consist like this. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, on a scale of 1 to 10, what one thing does your new home have to have and or be for it to be a 10? And then say, why is that important to you? And describe for me what you mean. What this does is it helps us stop assuming. Once we finish with the 10s, we want to take them through the expectations. We want to find out, how does somebody win with them? Then, how does somebody lose with them? Then we want to do an assumptive close and say, what do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your realtor? And then we ask them, what do you feel I have the right to expect from you as my client? When you do the expectations correctly, you're going to discover that loyalty, honesty, and sincerity are some of the most important things that your customers are going to want. And interestingly enough, this allows you to end your consultation with a buyer's agency agreement, or what I like to call the agreement of loyalty. This allows you to go into a true relationship with the customer that you're both committed to. We've now finished the entire process of the buyer's consultation. Remember, this process should take about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on your customer's questions. For those of you that are watching this video, make sure that you're out there and you're practicing, because you know practice will make you perfect. And if you're practicing outside of meeting with the customers, that's the best thing. Because if you aren't, who are you practicing on? The customer. And that is a little expensive, isn't it? I am Nikki Ubaldini, and I wish you all the luck in all your buyer's consultations. Enjoy and have fun.
All right, there is Nikki. She does a great job. She covers a lot of ground there. And so I want to go back and just kind of talk a little bit about, she covered so many different things. Of all the different things, and I wrote a bunch of notes here of things that I wanted to talk about with you. But of all the different things that she talked about, anything just jump out at you right away that she said that got your attention? Anything that she mentioned or a thought that she shared that really popped into your head a little bit? First thing she opens up with is, before you get started, you really have to know what you're going to say. You're going to have to learn the scripts. You know, this is a very scripted business, and not scripted from the standpoint that we have to sound robotic and we have to sound artificial and we have to sound inauthentic, but scripted in the idea of, I need to know how to guide these conversations so that it flows in a manner that leads people to clarity and it leads people to make a good decision. And so know how you're going to approach that. And so those scripts live in the script books, right? So if you go back to Ignite 2.0, if you go back to it on KW University, in the toolkit, you're going to find a script book. There's one for the first half of the course called Sparks. There's one for the second half of the course called Elements. In the Elements script book, you're going to find scripts for buyers consultations. You can also go to KW University, and in the courses section, you're going to find 3 different script manuals. One manual, which is scripts for working with sellers, one manual working for buyers. There's a whole nother manual for lead generation scripts. That's where you're going to find some of these scripts. And these are guides, right? These are guides. They're not exactly memorize it word for word or you're going to have no luck. It's a guide to steer you through the conversation. So know where you're going to go. She said, make sure that you're educated, that you understand market conditions, right? How many homes are for sale right now? How quickly is the average days on market? Homes that are coming on the market, how long does it take? And right now, things are flying so quickly that if buyers have the misperception that they're going to have a lot of time, that they're going to be able to leisurely look at homes and weigh out the pros and cons, no, that's not the way it works right now. And so they have to have a good appreciation of the market. Now, how long did she say, when you determine through your questioning that they're ready, willing, and able to meet with you, how far out did she say would be the maximum that she would recommend you go before you get to that buyer's consultation appointment? Anybody remember how far she said? You can either throw it in chat or just unmute yourself if you want. Anybody remember? Anybody still with me? Bueller? Bueller, am I here by myself? There's in chat. There you go. Let's see in chat. 48 hours, Jorge, right. 48 hours is probably about as far as you want to go, because if it goes further out than 48 hours, A, there's a good chance that another agent's going to get in before you. And B, there's a good chance that there's going to be something that's going to come in and get in the way. Try to keep it less than 48 hours. And she said something that was super important that I really want to drive home. She said, don't feel like you have to do lots and lots of research ahead of time. And she said something that says buyers, well, you're going to find out that buyers are going to tell you what they think that they want. And then ultimately the house that they buy isn't what they think. You know, there's a saying that sometimes you'll hear in this industry, and it's a saying I don't really like very much. It says buyers are liars. And I don't like that because I don't think it's true. I don't think buyers necessarily intend to lie to us. What I think is that if we understand that people make decisions, human beings make decisions based on emotional drivers, they don't really know what they're going to fall in love with until they see it. It's no different than people. You know, if you were to ask a 12-year-old little boy or a little girl, you know, who will be the spouse that you'll fall in love with, they'll have an image of what they think they want, or maybe a 20-year-old would have an even clearer image. And yet the truth of the matter is, you don't really know you're falling in love until you fall in love. And sometimes it's a good match to what you thought it was going to be, and sometimes they're not a perfect match to what you thought they were going to be. What's true is, until people see the inventory and get a chance to experience it firsthand, they're not really going to know. We help them to prioritize what they think that they want in the home, but don't start trying to go out there and do too much research, because what's happens there is you're going to eliminate too many things. And let me give you an example. They may tell you, look, we want a home that has at least 3 bedrooms, and maybe a 4th that could be used as an office or a guest room if possible. And we need to have at least 2 full baths. And we'd like to be in this town, and we'd like to be in this price range. And they give you a menu item of things that are on their wants list. And so you run out to the MLS and you say, find me homes in this town, at least 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, all the different things. And when we do that search, we're going to get some. And that sum, let's just pick a number. Maybe there's 7 that meet that criteria. Well, what happens is we excluded a bunch of other homes in the process, and some of those homes could have worked. You know, some of those homes could have been in the right town, in the right price range. They had the right number of bedrooms, but they only had 1 bath. And the truth is, there was plenty of room to put a bath in. And because we only looked at the ones with 2 baths, we excluded all the ones with 1 baths. And some of those maybe could have been modified and been the dream house. You're better off keeping the search criteria as wide open as possible and letting people kind of take a look at them online and kick out the ones that don't meet their needs, rather than you filtering too much. Rosemary, I think you're on this call. It's not unlike the conversation you and I just had an hour ago about doing comps, pulling comps. The more filters you put on, the more limits your search results, and you just don't get as good information. So the idea is, you know, don't do too much research ahead. Kind of get a sense of what's important, get a sense of their basic price range, and then in the best practice, we start to kind of do everything that meets their broadest criteria and let them look at those online. We send them a list of those and let them filter those down to the ones that are the best fit. And then we ask people to kind of recognize that you're going to buy a house in a community as well. The community matters. So drive through the neighborhood real quick and make sure that there's not something in the neighborhood that would be a deal breaker. And take that list, the whole total list that I send you, maybe narrow it down to the top 10 or 12 or 15 that look good on paper, and then cruise the neighborhoods and let's narrow this down to maybe 4 or 5 that you really want to go inside of. When you do it that way, what happens is they're in total control of all the ones that they reject. And it really kind of reaffirms their ability to make a good decision. They've seen all the inventory. They know what's available. They rejected it. They're only seeing the ones that are the best of the best in their eyes. And that sets them up to be more able to make a decision and move forward. she talked a little bit about setting the expectation that we're not going to be doing this for home after home after home after home. That most buyers typically look at 8 to 10 homes before they make a decision. We're kind of planting that idea in their head so that they really expect that this is not going to be something that takes forever. She mentioned the importance about knowing some things about short sales and bank-owned properties. And while we don't have to go deep into short sales and do a class on these, the difference between the two, if you're not super well versed, is a short sale is a property that could be totally current in its payments. It's not necessarily one that's being at risk of being foreclosed upon, but it's a property that the value of the current market value isn't enough to pay back what's owed against it. Maybe I bought the house at a time when prices were higher and prices have come down. And now if I sold it today, I wouldn't really have enough to pay off my mortgage. If I sold it today, I'd actually have to come to the mortgage, to the closing, and write a check, not get a check at closing, to write one. And you know what? In the collapse of the housing market in 2008, for the next few years, 2009, 2010, 2011, as people's home values came down significantly, if they had to move many times, they would have to come to the closing and write a check for $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 in order to pay off the mortgage and move on. And if you don't have the resources to do that, then you're short. And it's up to the lender to decide whether or not they're willing to take a loss. That's what a short sale is. Now, again, could be totally current in their monthly payments. It's just that the market value is not enough to pay what is due, and the bank has to approve that. The bank doesn't just sell the house and say, you owed us $50,000 that we're not getting. They've got to be willing to do that. Oh, and by the way, if the bank writes off that loss, they're going to call the IRS or notify the IRS and let them know that in effect, they just gave you $40,000 and you will have to pay personal income tax on that in your next tax filing year. So just understand the implications of that from a seller's standpoint. From a buyer's standpoint, they take time. They take a long time. The banks don't make these decisions quickly. It could take an additional 2, 3, 6, 12 months to get the bank to decide whether or not they're going to approve that purchase. And if your buyer needs to get in faster, short sales may not be the best option. She mentioned bank-owned properties, REOs. REOs is actually an abbreviation that stands for real estate owned, and it's a ledger line that exists on the banks, on their books. They have resources in the way of money. They have resources in real estate that they own. Make no mistake, banks don't want to own real estate. They want to liquidate that real estate so that they have dollars to loan people and collect interest. That's what banks want to do. But sometimes they do have to foreclose on properties that people can't pay, and they take that property back into their possession. Those are bank-owned properties. And generally speaking, while the decisions are faster, because now the bank is the seller, it's not owned by a private person anymore, it's owned by the bank, and there's an asset manager at the bank whose job it is to sell these properties and work with an agent to market these properties. Those decisions can happen just as quickly as any other. But many times, a property that has been foreclosed by the bank, where the seller, the original owner rather, didn't have the funds to pay their mortgage, well, they also usually don't have the funds to take care of any maintenance issues. And a lot of times these properties are in kind of rough shape. She talked about the sweat equity that's involved. You just need to know a little bit about these, because buyers will frequently come to you and say, I've heard that if I buy a property in the distressed property market that I can get a little bit more for my money, and it might be a better option for me. And the truth is, yes, that's true. And it may be a great option for you. Just understand that there's complications. And so learn about those, learn about bank owned, learn about all that stuff. And she talked about how you would do a CMA ultimately to help them get some sense of what a good offer looks like. Never, 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 never tell them that if you offer this amount of money, I think that's what it's going to take to get the deal. You don't know how much it's going to take. And in today's market where things are getting into multiple bids so far over the asking price, one of the quickest ways to get sued is by telling a buyer that if you offer this price, I think you're going to get the house, only to have them offer the price and have somebody else get the house. Now there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get sued. So don't do that. right? What you do want to do is you want to look at the comps. You want to take a look at the market activity as you understand it. You want to guide them to what are you comfortable with? What would be the number that if you lost it at that price, that you're willing to let it go because it wasn't worth that much to you? We're going to guide them in the consultation to help them think about those things, but never are we going to make a recommendation, right? And then finally, one of the important things that she talked about, and it leads up to the buyer's agency agreement, is this conversation about expectations. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what do you believe you have the right to expect from me as your agent? Very important place that we get to in the consultation, because what will come up, and Nikki was spot on, is people are going to say, look, I feel I have the right to expect from you professionalism. I feel I have the right to expect from you that you're going to be loyal, that you're going to put my needs out there and ahead of your own, that you're going to be a good fiduciary. That's what I believe that I have the right to expect of you. And the reason we want to get those expectations on the table, A, we want to make sure that they don't expect us to do something that we can't do, right? If they say to you, you know what, Hal, what I expect is that you're only going to show us homes where people of this culture or race have lived, because I'm not willing to buy a house where someone like this has lived. You're going to only show me homes in neighborhoods that have this religious group living in them or this ethnicity living in them. No, those are fair housing violations. And if your expectation is that I'm going to do that, you got the wrong guy. And so I want to know, because I want to end this relationship right now. But more often than not, you're going to hear things like, I expect your loyalty, I expect you to be professional and cooperative and all those things. And the reason why we ask that is because it sets up the law of reciprocity. The very way that human beings behave is that we don't like things to be unbalanced. If you have the right to have some expectations of me, then I've earned the right to have some of you. And what's my expectation of you? My expectation is that if we're going to work together, that we do it in a professional relationship. My expectation is that you're going to sign this buyer's representational agreement, which is essentially a contract that says you're hiring me to represent you in the purchase of a home. And again, in your value proposition part of your consultation, when you share your market knowledge, you know, we went through the value proposition early on. It was like session 4 of Ignite. How do you define what your value proposition is for buyers and sellers? But once you've been able to clearly communicate that and they understand that working with you is going to get them the opportunity to get what they want better than working with anybody else. Once they've completely got that figured out, then what we're going to do is we're going to set up this expectation. And what I expect of you is we're going to do it under a contract. And if they're not willing to work with you under a buyer's agency agreement contract, then you have a decision to make. Are you willing to work that way? The vast majority of agents, quite honestly, in New Jersey, probably I would guess 95% of the agents are working with buyers without a contract. And it's partly because I think they think of that contract as a commission protection contract. If a buyer hears that, then what would be in their interest to sign that? Why would a buyer sign a contract that says, look, here's how this is going to go, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. If I show you the house and you decide that you want to buy the house, you can't cut me out of the deal. You can't go have your brother-in-law, who's a real estate agent, write this thing up and leave me high and dry. No. If I show it to you and you want it, you got to use me. The buyer's like, dude, what does that do for me? Like, who cares? Are you just protecting your commission? Or are you really interested in what matters for me? Here's why I want to work with a contract, because I can't work with everybody. There's a limited number of buyers that I can work with at one time and provide world-class service. And because of the fact that I'm a busy agent, and because of the fact that I've got a lot of listings, because I'm working hard in my lead generation to generate listing leads, because the marketing of those set listings are bringing me lots of buyers to work with, I'm going to be a little choosy because I can't work with all of you. I can only work with maybe 5, 6, 7 of you at any time. That's not to say I can't have more people in my pipeline, but I can't run more than 5 or 6 or 7 buyers out there looking at homes at one time. That's just too many. And so if you want to be one of those people, and if you want to take advantage of the value that I bring, this is how we're going to do it, right? We're going to sign this agreement and then you have priority. Absent the agreement, I'll do what I can, but I can't guarantee you that I'm going to have the time. And that's a finesse conversation. But I always love it when I hear an agent have that stand that says, let me show you how I do it. This is how it's going to work with me. And if you're not comfortable doing it my way, that's fine. You can work with anybody. But I believe in myself and I believe in my value. And I've got enough opportunities in front of me today that I only choose to work with the ones who are willing to do it the way that I need it to be done. And that's the buyer's agency agreement. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. It is now 12 o'clock. And give me any ahas, any takeaways, anything that you heard today that makes you think a little bit differently about this buyer process. Anything today that you still have questions on that maybe we can pick up on the next time we come. Anybody here have anything that they want to just share as an aha moment from today? Those of us that are left, there's so few people that have power today up in your neighborhood. We have a small group.
I'll say this, that it's super duper important to know your buyer's consultation. Even though there are just slides that you are kind of reading off, and now that we're doing Zoom, it's even easier because you don't have to schedule a time that's convenient for them to come to the office, which saves time, although I like to meet the people and is to create value, because unfortunately realtors, agents are a dime a dozen, but you always talk about value proposition. Why should they work with you as opposed to somebody else?
And that's the unique value proposition. What is it specifically uniquely about you that makes you a better choice for me?
Well, I actually had this conversation with somebody today, and I said, and I might have heard from you, the same exact conversation. I was like, are you the expert in that town or area? Are you the specialist? What makes you stand out from others? Because a colleague of mine said they were having problems or struggling getting to the close, and I personally don't work with anybody who doesn't sign the agreement.
Yeah.
We could date once or twice, but you got to marry me.
There's a great analogy. I love it. Well, look, I felt the same way too. Look, I was willing, maybe in the very beginning, to kind of do a buyer's consultation. If I think you're serious, if I think you're ready, willing, and able, and you're qualified and all that stuff, I may take you out once and show you some homes, and kind of a try before you buy opportunity. But we're not gonna, go out very often unless we have an agreement. And I'm gonna tell you, the truth is, if you do it the right way, you can kind of wrap this up in one day. The truth be told, if you show homes the right way, and that's a whole nother class, the expectation is we're going to get under contract in one day of showings. I can teach you how to do that. And you're going to be like, wait, what? Yeah, you can. There's a lot of things that have to line up. That's a topic for another day. But the unique value proposition is really critical. Anything else that popped out at you today? Any other ahas?